Okay, so I was a Christian for a long time. I was a Christian for 15 or so years of my life. I started when I was about 6 years old. My family was an immigrant family. We moved from Venezuela, and we were put into church. We didn't have family here. Church became our family, and we were going sometimes 4 times a week to church between kids' events, adult events, Bible studies, worship nights. We were there all the time. And so I really had Jesus as my savior, and I truly believed in the doctrine, and I knew a lot of the books. I mean, I could recite every book of the Bible, Old and New Testament, in order. I knew hundreds of verses. And at some point, I was actually out evangelizing. I was with people, with my Bible outside, bringing people to my church to convert them to Christ. And so I was really, really into it. This was my life. If Jesus is going to save me from a life of eternal torment, then why wouldn't I fully have given myself to that idea if I really believed it? And I did. So I did. And, eventually as I got older, some questions came up. And the questions that came up were the ones that I had even when I was a kid, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that to me seemed so contradictory that I still was not able to answer. And from there, in 10th grade of high school, I had both philosophy and psychology classes in the same year. And this really started me on the path of wanting to understand psychology, of wanting to understand why the human mind is what it is. And it taught me that the human mind is not as trustworthy as we might think it is, as we might want it to be. In fact, there's a lot of little vulnerabilities that the human brain has that are evident by a lot of psychological studies. Ways that the humans want to conform, ways that the human will create blind spots for itself in order to belong to the group, in order for its identity to be wired to a certain type of belief, because those beliefs create safety in the human. And evolutionarily, throughout a very long time that humans have been on Earth, these emotions and these sequences of feeling have created safety in the human. Every emotion has created safety in the human in one way or another. Anger, there's a reason for it. Jealousy, there's a reason for it. Depression, sadness, happiness, joy. All of these emotions are for social bonding. And when we look at it from a scientific perspective, from aka what we know so far about the world and about humanity, we start to see some very interesting patterns. And that's what we're going to talk about today. There are 8 brain buttons that make it very likely for people to stay inside of the Christian faith. These 8 brain buttons are things that are happening usually subconsciously, meaning they're not the person that is using them or the person that is having their buttons pressed doesn't know all the time that this is happening. And typically, when you're in the Christian faith, there are lots of very neatly packaged explanations for these brain buttons, if at all, if they're aware of it at all. So we're going to go through those today, the 8 brain buttons. And I want to know, have you used any of these? Do you recognize them? Personally, I see them a lot in when I might be talking to a Christian now, and I hear the way they try to justify their faith or their belief in their faith. And it always comes back to these 8 brain buttons. And in fact, all of sales, all of marketing uses these 8 brain buttons. So in this video, we're not going to go into the theology. We're not going to go into history. We're not going to go into facts or debate historical figures. What we're going to do is we're going to deconstruct the psychology behind why Christianity feels real. Let's start. So the first one is social proof. Humans are social animals, as you probably know, and this means that they're a lot like most other mammals. In fact, we share this with all other mammals. That means wolves, that means giraffes, that means whales, that means dolphins, that means any mammal on Earth shares this wiring, which is whatever the group is doing, stay with the group. Let's do what the group is doing, because the group means safety, the group means food, the group means not getting lost and starving to death, basically. So all of these mammals have a very primordial wiring to stay with the group. This is so deep, in fact, that it's almost fundamental to being a mammal. Uh, Children, when they're born, regardless of what species they're born as, baby mammals stick with their mother for a long period of time. And this extends out to staying with the group for long periods of time. So it's easier for the baby to not ask too many questions and to simply trust its caregivers for the answers to life. This, like I'm saying, extends out as the human continues to grow up. This continues to expand, and it happens both with the group and with the authority of the group. So the reason this brain button is so powerful is because a lot of people, even if they have doubts about Christianity, they look around and they see that their family still believes. They look around and they see that their partner still believes, that their best friends still believe. And instead of continuing to ask the questions that would allow them to maybe not believe in the faith anymore, it's much easier to look around at their social group and say, hey, in order for me to belong, which is a primordial mammalian instinct, it's easier for me to believe this. So I'm just going to spin it, and this is subconscious, right? They don't know they're doing this a lot of time. But they're just going to spin it in a way that is easier for them to believe so that they can stay in their cushy beliefs and not have to go against their group, which is going to trigger the brain button of unsafety as a result of not being with the group. So this is something that is happening on a subconscious level a lot of times. This is happening to a lot of people all over the world. And it's a very powerful mover for why Christianity became such a powerful religion. Without going into the history, the social proof aspect is huge. And once you see it in Christianity, you can see it everywhere. It's in politics. It's all over the media. I mean, the more people do something, the more people want to do it. And this, I believe, is a flaw in the human design, if you will, especially compared to the modern world. If we look at the modern world and we look at the way we are not necessarily optimized or evolved properly for this reality, we can see that this social proof brain button is probably a mistake. Or at least to not know it and be aware of it can cause you to make mistakes. So that's one. The second is authority, appeal to authority. The second brain button is appeal to authority. So these buttons are things that can be pressed in yourself and in others that can cause the questioning to stop, that can cause people to feel safe again in the belief system. And the appeal to authority is very similar to the one that we just heard about in mammals with the social group. This second one is actually, if the authority says it, aka if mama bear does it, then it's safe for the cub bears to do it. And this, once again, extends out not just in babies, but throughout all mammalian instinct, and is especially powerful inside of humans. We can see this very vividly. It depends on what people choose their authority to be, but once they have chosen that authority, they are very gung-ho. They are fully bought in to what that authority says and believes. And that's because following that authority puts them into the in-group, which is number one. It gives them social proof. So this appeal to authority is very similar to the one that we just heard, and it's about the safety that is incurred as a result of staying with the group and listening to the elder. So as a young human in a tribe a very long time ago, you didn't have access to all of the experience that some of the elders of the tribe had. And so it was much easier to trust them and to adopt their way of life, their way of being, than it was to try to create your own. In fact, that would typically result in death because you would end up eating the wrong berries, you would end up going down the wrong cliff, you would end up trying to hunt that animal wrong and getting hurt, and it ultimately would not be a good time. So it paid off to listen to the authorities, to listen to the elders. And this is mammalian, and this is human. And so when we look at what people choose to make their authority, people make almost anything their authority. I mean, there are girls that make Taylor Swift their authority, and there's boys that make Travis Scott their authority. And a lot of times this happens subconsciously. They don't sit there and be like, oh yes, Taylor Swift is my authority. No. What's happening is that they see that they are receiving a sense of safety and belonging from this figure, from this being, and they then assign authority to that thing. Now, the dangerous part, the part that we need to be super aware of, is that this mechanism is the same almost no matter what. What changes is what that person has made their authority to be. So, like I'm saying, some people make it Taylor Swift, some people make it Travis Scott. A lot of people, Christians, make it the Bible, the Word of God Himself. What is going to be higher authority than the Word of God Himself? So, you can see why this is potentially problematic. Is not only are people using this as a very powerful form of authority that literally runs their entire life, but it's fascinating to see how different these appeals to authority can be even within Christianity. Meaning the way the Catholics talk about this authority versus the way the Lutherans or the Baptists or the, I don't know, pick one. Pick another type of Christianity. The way they all formulate and construct their level of authority is a little bit different. They might all say they have the same authority, but in fact, their interpretation of the Bible and of God's laws and of God's word is different. So I think this is something really fascinating to take a look at, because once you see it here, you see it everywhere. You'll see it in Republicans with Trump. You'll see it in liberals with Kamala Harris, or literally anyone, Bernie Sanders. I mean, you'll see it with anyone. Once you learn what they made their authority, you can see how a lot of their identity and their behaviors stem from the calling of that person or of that thing to be their authority. Which leads us into brain button number 3. Brain button number 3 refers to the identity. And this is specifically the I am statement. So we have seen through observation, through science, through measurement of the human psyche over many years, we have seen that the I am, stating I am blank, is among the most powerful sentences in the human psyche and in the English language as a result. Whatever we put after I am tells us who we are, which then tells us what behaviors we should do in order to stay safe and to stay part of the group and to continue to ensure for our survival. The I am tells us our values. It tells us what we will and will not tolerate. It tells us who we hang out with and who we don't. The I am is one of the most powerful sentences in the world, in the language, that we can work with. Because once you start to change what you think your I am is, you can literally change your entire life. And this is the case when you see someone, maybe you haven't seen someone for like 2-3 years, and you come back and you see them and they're either doing super well or super not well. They can either literally be a millionaire or they can be a homeless drug addict. The difference can be narrowed down to what they started to call themselves as I am. And so if you have Christians that, first of all, are calling themselves Christian, this is not just a symbol, an internal symbol to themselves of what they believe, but it's of who they are. If you say I am a Christian, this is a giant label, not just of what you believe, but of who you are. And so when you start to, let's say, deconstruct someone's beliefs or start to challenge someone's beliefs as they believe them to be, if you're attacking the Christianity, let's say, and that person has a belief in their mind that says I am Christian, then on some level, that person is going to feel like you are attacking them directly. Because you're not just attacking their faith, you're attacking who they are as a result of attacking that faith. And we don't attack faith on this channel, but hypothetically, if you were to do that. So I implore you, I invite you to start auditing the ways that you tell yourself I am anything for yourself. And I implore you and I invite you to look around at the media you consume and at the people that you talk to and see what kind of things they tell themselves they are. with the I am sentence. And beyond that, I think we can actually start to make even deeper patterns around what someone continuously tells themselves I am for a certain amount of time and what that person becomes. And I think it's fascinating if you start to do this for yourself, even if you are brave enough to ask people, that you might meet in public, if you see them on the bus or on the subway, or if you see them at the park, and just chat with them a little bit and see if you can get a sense of what their I ams are and see how their life as a result is. Okay, let's go on. Brain button that makes Christianity feel very, very real. Number 4, the emotional loop cycle. Now, this one is juicy. This is a really, really big one. There are studies that say that humans bond to the source of relief from fear, shame, and guilt. So that means that if a human feels fear, shame, and guilt, and then something comes along and soothes that fear, shame, or guilt, the human is very likely to bond to that thing that causes the relief, even if the thing that causes the relief is the thing that caused the fear, shame, and guilt to begin with. The evolutionary reason for this is that it is safer for the human to stay with the group, even if that group is abusing them, because it meant, more likely to survive. The argument is that life a very long time ago for humans was very unsafe and was pretty unpredictable. And so even if they were being abused by the group, the fact that they were experiencing fear, shame, and guilt as a result of their life was pretty common. It was pretty normal to fear, shame, and guilt because people died, because life was dangerous, because there was all kinds of uncertainties and things to watch out for all the time, and shit went wrong all the time. So the group provided relief from the fear, shame, and guilt, and thus bonded the humans more to the group as the relief from life's uncertainties and life's production of fear, shame, and guilt. This same emotional loop cycle is why people stay in abusive relationships. They know that they're being abused, but the abuser is also providing relief. And so this causes the human to bond to the thing that is causing the relief, even if it's the thing that caused the fear, shame, and guilt to begin with. I think this is fascinating, and I think many Christians, because I've talked to hundreds of Christians, yes, hundreds, and there will probably be thousands before this year is over, many Christians have a relationship to fear, shame, and guilt that the Bible and their faith fixes and causes relief for, which then bonds them to the belief system even more. So I see it very commonly with young men and adult content addictions. They will constantly cycle between, I'm good, I don't have to do this anymore, and holy shit, I've stumbled again. Christ, please forgive me. I'm sorry. I don't want to go to hell. I want to be in your light. Jesus, please. And this constant loop is creating an actual addiction, an actual certified hypnotic trance long term that bonds the human to the source of the relief. So this happens to lots of Christians. I've talked to many of them, and many of them have a relationship to some sort of vice or some sort of their sin, quote unquote, that is redeemed through their relationship with Jesus, is redeemed through reading the Bible, through going to worship music, through fellowshipping with other Christians, going to Bible study, etc. They get the relief from these negative emotions, which is actually taught. You can actually teach guilt. You can teach shame. You can teach fear. So if they go to church for a while, or if they grew up in church, they've probably been taught fear, shame, and guilt. And then they're taught that the only way to relieve that fear, shame, and guilt, or rather the most powerful way to relieve that fear, shame, and guilt, is through the blood of Jesus, is through communion with Jesus, is through having a relationship with Jesus. So I could dive so far into this one. This one is so fascinating to me because I think that this emotional loop cycle has created so much hurt in the world that people don't even realize is hurt. It's literally an abuse cycle that works because it's addictive, and it does actually provide this relief that humans find soothing, but it's really exploiting some of these brain vulnerabilities in the human. Moving on. Let's go to number 5. And by the way, please leave a comment here if you think any of this is interesting, if you think I should dive deeper into any of these, or if you have any questions, please let us know. Number 5, another brain button that makes Christianity feel extremely real is co-regulation. So humans, there are studies that say that humans around, this is very similar to the social proof, which is number 1, but there's a little bit of a different nuance here that is very important, is that it's not just being with the group, but actually doing what the group does in exact movements together is an extremely bonding practice. And if the humans do this with a common belief, meaning if we all do jumping jacks together exactly in sync, that's very bonding to humans. I know it sounds a little silly, but it literally is. And I hope that one day we can test it, because we're going to be live and we're going to do 10 jumping jacks together in perfect sync, and you're going to see how your brain feels a little bit differently after. But more importantly than this is that when humans do the exact same motions together and therefore feel bonded, this feeling is intensified and expanded upon when the belief and the reason for why they do those exact movements together is the same. So you can see how religion kind of plays on this, where it's not just about the jumping jacks in sync, although that is very powerful, right? Imagine those people in worship music, how they're raising their hands, they're all singing the same songs at the same time. A lot of times they're eating bread at the same time, they're drinking wine at the same time. These are all bonding practices, especially over time, over years of every week going and doing these things with the people at the same time. It's a very bonding, very powerful practice that wires the human to a feeling of safety. So then when you start to ask some very deep philosophical questions about why the faith is structured the way it is, which we will get to, it's very difficult for them to think their way out of it because they have a feeling of safety as a result of doing these rituals for so long. And so when the people do this and they have the same belief, the same reason for why they do it, it's intensified like 10 times. And so you can see again why religion is so powerful at this, is because not only are we doing the exact same thing, but we're doing it for the same reason. And that is not only extremely bonding, but is quite vulnerable to the human brain as it, like I'm saying, it starts to combine this with a sense of safety and belonging and certainty that is very difficult to break away from if you're not aware of it. And the brain will do all kinds of gymnastics to actually stick to this feeling and to justify this feeling in multiple ways. And so I encourage you, if you have conversations with Christians, this is one that you should be aware of. Let's move on. Number 6. Brain button number 6 that makes Christianity feel so real to believers is the brain button of being chosen, of being special. This is an extremely powerful brain button. I know it works for me. I know it works for a lot of people. Everybody wants to be chosen. Everybody wants to be special. And God makes you that. Christ makes you that because Christ chose you. Not only did you choose Christ, but he chose you. And he seeked you. He sought you, is the right word to say that. He sought you. And why wouldn't you want to be chosen by the creator of the universe? This is a very powerful brain button because it makes life's difficulties seem much more trivial in comparison to, for example, being chosen. All of a sudden you feel a lot more special as a result of doing it this way, as a result of being chosen by God. And this is the case in lots of different religions. I mean, you can see this in cults too. This is a very powerful tactic, a very powerful brain button that people use to make people buy into a certain belief system or into a certain way of being. And marketing, good marketing does this too. Good sales does this too. They make you feel chosen. Hey, this product was made for you because you're special, and this product is special. And so this is for you. This is going to solve your problems. We made this thinking with you in mind. But, what's crazy is that with religion, it's even 10 times, 20 times, 100 times more powerful because it's the creator of the freaking universe that has chosen you to have a relationship with, which is all in your imagination, by the way, but that's fine. That's a different topic for a different day. the creator of the universe has chosen you to have a relationship with. This is extremely powerful. And so all of a sudden, the freaking math test that didn't go well, or your mom yelling at you, or your dog dying, or all these things feel so much more trivial because God chose you. How can you feel bad when you've been chosen because you're special to be with God forever in heaven? This is a really powerful one for multiple reasons, and it's important that we audit this in ourselves. And of course, we all want to be special. We all want to be chosen. We all want to be with people that think we were special and people that choose us. And I want that for you too. And we should be really aware of how powerful that brain button is, especially if you don't have a social container, if you don't have friends, if you don't have family. Being chosen is an extremely powerful button. And this had to do with status in the social group a long time ago. Being chosen was basically having status. Not only did you want to be part of the group, but you wanted to be high up in status inside of that group. That was very, very good odds for your survival. If you not only were with the right tribe, but if you were known very well within the tribe, if you were king, queen, of this, I mean, tribes don't have king queens, but if you were a very high-ranking person in this tribe, you were much more likely to survive and have access to resources and have access to safety. And so being chosen is this ultimate status symbol that Christians get from God. They don't need status, because why would they need status? Because the ultimate creator of the universe has chosen them. That's the ultimate status. So that's one. And that's number 6. So let's move on to number 7, the RAS. This one is one of my favorites. This is the reticular activating system. This is basically the brain's filter. And I'm sure you've seen this before. I'm sure you've seen it in many ways where, if I say don't think of a red Tesla, or don't see a red Tesla tomorrow, you're much more likely to see a red Tesla tomorrow. How often is it that you hear that someone that buys a new car, let's say they buy a freaking Toyota Corolla, all of a sudden they see Toyota Corollas everywhere. This is the exact same thing, the reticular activating system. This is also what makes the law of attraction so powerful among that community, if you're into that, is that they change what their brain is filtering for, and it's much easier to see those things in the world. And so if you do that subconsciously for a certain amount of time, you start to see things manifest for yourself, because you're finally, your brain is finally open and suggestible enough to see those things. And I encourage you to try this with anything. If it can be the color green, it can be butterflies, it can literally be anything. But the point is that if your reticular activating system is trained by religion or is trained by Christianity over time, that's all you're going to see everywhere. And this plays a lot into the confirmation bias. This plays into lots of biases that we have. As we continue to consume certain information or be around certain people, we continue to see the world in that way, because that's what our filter has deemed safe, or has deemed familiar, and familiarity is safety. So that's why it's really important to continue to audit our thoughts and continue to audit our friend groups, continue to audit our material that we're consuming, because whatever we are consuming is actually putting a vote in our brain that is changing our filter or affecting our filter, that can literally change how we see the world. This is extremely powerful, as you can imagine, for many reasons. I mean, how many times have you talked to someone of the opposite political agenda and thought, oh my God, this person is so brainwashed. This person has no idea what's really happening. And they might think the same of you. And it's because your filters are focused on two entirely different things. And this is, this is how we see people with depression. Not to say that people can just think themselves out of depression, but one of the reasons people get stuck in it is because their filter is only seeing these negative things over an extended period of time. It can become difficult to see your way out of it or think your way out of it. Because you feel that way, and so that's all that you see, and so that's all that you feel, and so that's all that you see, and so that's all that you feel, and it creates this never-ending almost loop of, that person's reality being spat back to them constantly. And so the more we choose conscious thoughts, and I would encourage you to try this, the more we choose conscious thoughts and we choose what we want to see, we choose what we want to filter in the world, the more we're going to see the RAS at play. And this is extremely powerful, because what we choose to see changes our brain chemistry, it changes our blood chemistry, and therefore changes how we feel, changes what we have access to in our visual cortex and in our awareness and in our reticular activating system. So the more you choose what you want to see and the more you choose what you are going to see, the more you actually see those things. Think about why this is important is because this is very confirming for a Christian. Somebody that has grown up in these belief systems or that has spent a lot of time studying them, this is all they're going to see. They're going to see the world through this lens. And so it's going to be very difficult for them to see their way out of it or think their way out of it if their RAS is too rigidly trained on this belief system. And so one of the things that we have to do is, if we want to practice other ways of thinking and being and seeing the world because we want to empower ourselves and others, we have to be able to change our filter, be able to change the prompts that our brain is filtering for. Okay, and number 8. This is the final brain button. This one is important to talk about, just like they all are. But it's the fact that it's a self-contained system. Something being a self-contained system is a very powerful brain button for humans because humans want that level of certainty. And so anything that claims to have this full level of certainty and explanation for every angle is extremely powerful for humans. Humans are the only animal that questions its life, and so and it's the only one that's aware of its own death. Humans are the only animals that are aware of their own death. So because of this, it creates, especially as the human gets older, it creates this angst in their reality where they really want to have answers to things. They want to have a level of certainty. The number one question is death, but it can really be, everything kind of extends from there. All other questions that humans want to ask and that humans want access to stem from that one, which is what happens when we die, and when am I going to die, and is it going to hurt, and who's going to be there, and am I going to miss my family, and are they going to miss me, and blah, blah, blah. From there, all these other questions come into play of like, why are we here, and what is the purpose of this, and what should I do with my life, and is doing this right or wrong, or all of these things that we all question, we've all questioned. And the fact that the fact that Christianity is a self-contained system where they don't need to go anywhere else for any answers is a very powerful brain button, because to them it feels more real as a result of being a self-contained system, even though they may not necessarily realize that it's become a self-contained system over 2,000 years of apologetics, over 2,000 years of the religion basically working on itself, these religious leaders over time, and the members themselves continuing to ask these questions and to continuing to interpret the Bible to answer these questions that we all have. Many of them, of course, are kind of inherent into the Bible, but many of these questions and answers are not inherent to the Bible. They're things that had to be interpreted over and over. And so something being a self-contained system is very powerful. We all search for this. Whether you're doing it in science or whether you're doing it in history or whether you're doing it in theology, it's very important to have kind of this full scope way of explaining the world that doesn't allow you to have too many extra questions, because those extra questions produce angst, and that angst is not good for our survival historically as humans. So the human mind loves the certainty that comes from a self-contained system, and this is one of the very reasons why Christianity is so powerful, is because not only does it provide social proof and it's appealing to authority, not only does it give you a proper identity and an I am, not only does it addict you and create a hypnotic trance over time using the emotional loop cycles, not only does it provide you co-regulation, not only does it make you feel special for being chosen, not only does it filter your brain so it's all you can see, but it also is a self-contained system, so you never have to look outside of it. And those are the reasons that Christianity can feel so real. Those are the 8 brain buttons. My name is Julio. See you on the next one.